Hey, how's it going, everybody? And welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we've got some news in the fantasy football world. Obviously, yesterday we found out some very disappointing stuff about Travis Etienne and a Lisfranc injury he's dealing with. So, in today's mock draft, we'll be breaking down that James Robinson situation a little bit more and talking in some detail of how I see him moving up the board and whatnot, and what my expectations are for him heading into this coming fantasy season. Additionally, I think we've kind of made over the hump, boys. My surgery, my recovery, we're 48 hours removed from that wisdom teeth removal. I seem to be doing fine as of right now. I don't think I'll miss an episode here going forward, so we're going to keep pounding out these mock drafts. I should, by the end of the week, be able to get back into some off-based content in the sense that I can get back to doing some lists and whatnot, talking about situations, must-own players, rankings, all that good stuff, because I can actually video prep now and not worry too much about my mouth and being able to not speak. So things are trending in the right direction. Content should pick up back on a normal basis. And it's been a few mock drafts in a row, but we should start getting back into some of that good stuff. So thank you all so much for sticking with me. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Let's hit that intro and get straight in to today's mock draft. Alrighty, boys, so although I haven't missed the episode, I'm still not feeling perfect, so we're going to try and get through today's mock relatively quickly and make this an efficient video for you all. Let's get this draft kicked off here. A 12-team full PPR format is the name of the game for today's mock draft. I'll be picking right in the middle of the bend here at the 1.6 position. And right off the bat, to me, it looks like we are best suited to go running back, although the draft did start with 5 of them being taken. My top 2 choices would be Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley here. I think I'm going to go the safer route. I'm going to take Zeke at this spot. I've got him right now as my RB5, and I've got Saquon Barkley ranked just behind him. Another quick note, I will be updating my draft guide rankings here within the next few days. I haven't had time to get around to that in the last week, as there hasn't been too much significant injury-related news, although that is now changing. We've also got Sony Michel shipped off to the Rams. We'll talk about a little bit how I see that impacting the Darrell Henderson situation in Los Angeles. But at the end of the day, the biggest news of the day here is that James Robinson injury, the injury to Travis Etienne, which now elevates James Robinson back up our fantasy board. So we'll break that down here. And as a player who... Let's check Robinson's ADP right now. It will be on the rise, but there hasn't been quite enough time for that adjustment to be made here. His ADP is currently 60. So essentially what that means is he's going as the last draft choice in the 5th round of 12-team leagues. That should change now. I still don't know if I'm comfortable enough to say that he should be a 2nd-round pick. I think what's more realistic for us is maybe a middle to early 3rd-round pick in these 12-team leagues for James Robinson. And that's something I'll be breaking down here with my 3rd round selection. I kind of strategically placed my draft pick right in the middle of the board, so I thought I had at least a chance to draft him at respectable ADP. Because right around the range of players I think he should be going is kind of right after this little teardrop here with J.K. Dobbins. I'm not so confident in CEH, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders, and although I do really like David Montgomery and Chris Carson, I think Darrell Henderson takes a bit of a hit here as well with that Sony Michel news, as I think he will actually be quite an integral part of that run game. I think we have enough information from James Robinson last season to elevate him up our boards. This is still a very bad offensive line in Jacksonville. This is still a team that's going to be losing a lot of games. But if he can produce for us this year how he did last season, and that was both as a runner and a pass catcher, he should be able to have quite a nice involvement and usage level in this offense. No more ETN worrying about him snatching up those touches. I'm sure Carlos Hyde will have his involvement as a runner, but he's not really too big of a pass-catching threat. I'm looking for James Robinson right after J.K. Dobbins goes off the board here. A lot of people are going to like CEH more still. Some people will still like DeAndre Swift, but these guys all have significant risk. And if you've been watching me this offseason, you know I am a big-time anti-Clyde Edwards-Helaire drafter this year. The pick here for me in the 2nd round is pretty easy, though. Najee Harris. Give me the rookie running back who is virtually bust-proof at this point. They're going to have to run the ball. They're going to have to get him involved in the goal line. And they're going to have to... Darren Waller goes off the board there. That was going to be my next easy pick here. But now I think it's respectable to at least entertain a James Robinson at this spot. Doesn't mean I'm going to for sure pick him, but obviously what I'm trying to do with this new news coming out is at least illustrate for you all how to start approaching James Robinson. And this is just a guess too. I could be absolutely wrong, but I think his ADP in 12-team leagues will settle in right around this middle of the third round, because what we're seeing is we have more past and previous success on James Robinson's track record than we have of Darrell Henderson, who's going as roughly an early fourth-round pick. Every once in a while, you'll see him reached up and taken in the late third round. Sometimes he falls into the middle of the fourth. It's kind of a wide ranging of varieties based off how people feel on him. I'm feeling a lot better in one of the paid subscriber leagues I'm in right now. I wasn't loving my running back room too much. I did have J.K. Dobbins and Alvin Kamara, but then that ETN news freed up James Robinson for me, so I'm feeling a lot better about that team's depth. But for the sake of today's video, I think I can still feel better about a James Robinson than I would about Josh Jacobs and Miles Sanders for sure, although there's definitely risk calculated into each situation. The question becomes, though, I don't know if I really want to take James Robinson ahead of a Terry McLaurin or an Allen Robinson, because I think those are legitimate high upside wide receiver one caliber players. So I'm going to go Terry McLaurin here as my team's wide receiver one, and I'm actually going to pause the draft board. And this team because I don't want the ADP, since I don't have other mock drafters on this board with me, to goof with the outcome of this draft too much. So I'm going to play a little bit of God's hand here, and I'm going to manipulate this draft board. But this is for the sole purpose of I want to at least reflect with some reason, with some relative accuracy for what my prediction and my projection is for the rise in James Robinson's ADP. I would like him to go off the board in that range. I certainly think he'll be going sooner than Darrell Henderson at this point with that Sony Michel trade. So although Carson, Jacobs, Montgomery, Swift, they all, CEH should have went off the board here. Yep, 212. Although all of those players, I said, personally, I might like a James Robinson more than, the ADP doesn't mean it's necessarily going to agree with me. So I'm going to pencil him in here as the 12 teams' fourth-round pick, their second RB off the board. I think that this is probably the early first is a conservative projection for where James Robinson should be being drafted at. So this Liz Frank injury, for those of you who are already Travis Etienne owners, I hope for your sake you've got an IR spot stashed in your teams if you're playing Dynasty. Long term, I don't know if this factors too much into the situation, but we're looking at a bare minimum of 12 weeks. So he's going to be out for at least half of this NFL season. And if the Jags are a complete dump, like I think almost all of us expect them to be, do not expect to see Travis Etienne out there this season. That was the main thing for me, the main factor in why I thought he might be absent for the whole season, because the risk, you see Schefter, Rappaport say potentially out for the season, is that if this is not a competitive football team, they're going to rest him. Don't waste one of the most expendable positions in the NFL, one of the most injury-prone, most likely to be beaten and battered players on the field. Don't waste him for the sake of getting him reps out there. You can do that stuff in non-contact training camp, get him reps in drills and such like that. Let him stay healthy, clean, fresh. Don't risk re-injury. Don't make something worse than it already is. I think this is a second chance and kind of a blessing for James Robinson here to potentially go out there and rework that starting job for his team. So, I do have an interesting situation here. I'm not loving the running backs on the table here for me at the 4-7. I'm off Myles Gaskin. I saw too much Malcolm Brown in the preseason for my liking. Kareem Hunt's not a player I'm overly interested in. I could go Lamar Jackson here, but I think I want to wait on quarterback in this draft. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb are nice picks, but I've been drafting them a lot frequently on the past few videos here. We do already have Zeke. That doesn't play too much into... I don't think you should not draft Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb for the sole fact that you have a running back of the same team on that roster. Look at Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones last season. It's just a fair pairing. But I've got Amari Cooper and Chris Godwin like lined up right next to each other in the draft guide rankings. They're very closely connected to one another. Go check that out if you haven't done so already. There's a lot of information in the draft guide this year for a very, very good value for the fantasy market this season. We've got top 250 player profiles and analysis, 60 must-own players in rounds 1 through 20 of 12-team leagues, sleepers and bust candidates, a master list of every position that I went through there, in addition to some ceiling and floor rankings on each player's player profile, and then a risk radar analysis based off of their current ADP. There's a ton of stuff in there, so it'd mean a lot. It'd help the channel, support the brand a bunch if you go check that out. But we'll go Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin. I feel decent about that as my wide receiver 1 and 2 pairing. Not loving the wide receivers and the value at the top 3 spots here, but I do like entertaining Brandon Ayuk right now, as he might not be there for me the next round. I might go back to my old reliable here. Tyler Lockett goes out the board. That's a pick I would love to make. You know, I find myself doing this a lot lately. TJ Hawkinson. What is not to love about this fantasy situation? The volume he's going to see in Detroit. He should be the best and most favored pass catcher on this football team. I'm feeling really good about the top 2 running backs I've got in this roster. I'm feeling pretty solid about my top 2 wide receivers. I'm going to want to add more depth to that position later on, throughout this draft. But I think that hitting that tight end position at least once, well, you should be doing it no more than once. But if you can get one of those top 6 tight ends at value, then do it. After that, I'm fading the tight end position and not really worrying about it until the 10th plus round, because I think a lot of those guys all come in kind of the same size, shape, and whatnot in value to your rosters. They're going to be boom-bust plays. And I think that Hawkinson is kind of the last of this tier where on a week-to-week basis, you can expect a healthy volume of targets headed his way and a healthy level of volume involvement for him and his team. So Devontae Smith's an interesting pick here. I have seen some nice route running from him in the preseason. Nothing too spectacular. I do have my question marks about Jalen Hurts, although I do like him as a player. But I want to see more consistency out of him. The name that caught my eye here, though, in this full PPR format as an RB3 is Chase Edmonds. This is a player that I think has very, very, very serviceable utility in these full PPR formats for the simple fact that he is a high-tempo, pass-catching back that's going to be very efficient with his touches. I don't think Chase Edmonds comes out here and is a player that finishes within sniffing distance of being an RB1. He is certainly an RB2, but the PPR format favors his skill set very nicely. And I think of all the players, he is one that is much more suited for this format than, say, a Damian Harris, who is probably down the board just a tad here. Yep, more of a standard play. He's going to give you your volume, your decent average yards per touch numbers, but he's not going to give you anything crazy, especially in that receiving game. So Chase Edmonds at the 6-7. I was thinking going Chase Claypool. That would have been my top receiver off the board. We'll see who's left for me here at this next draft spot. There is the potential of reaching up for a Trey Sermon, which I would not mind here. And he's questionable. Sermon won't suit up Sunday at the Chargers due to an ankle injury. This is what I love about Sleeper. As I'm drafting, I can make sure I don't make any goofy picks here, and that's interesting. Trey Lance should not be ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo on that depth chart. Okay, so he basically has a not expected to play injury designation. Doesn't sound like anything significant, but as I'm drafting, I like to just take a peek at these things because it can ultimately help me prevent myself from making a dumb pick. If there's something, I have Sleeper notifications on my phone, so usually I hear or get a tweet from Schefter or Rappaport when there's a significant injury. I woke up to news yesterday about that Travis Etienne Liz Frank injury. I woke up to more news this morning about the Rams and the Pats trading for Sony Michel and a couple second-round picks that are conditional plays there. All good stuff to have information and access to. If you've got Twitter, turn on the notifications for Adam Schefter. He's the major NFL guy. He'll get you all the news and information you need to know. Just a good tool and resource to have for you at your disposal this fantasy season. 40 seconds. So the question begs, Robbie Anderson also just got a new contract. Do I want to go Robbie Anderson and get a third receiver who I think could see a lot of nice volume in this PPR format? Or do I want to go out here and grab a Trey Sermon? I'm not even sure if Michael Carter is a player who's going to be there for me as my RB4 if I were to wait. And I do think there's a heck of a lot of names at the wide receiver position left over. So I think I might reach up here and take a running back. Or excuse me. Yes, take a running back. We will go with Trey Sermon. So I'm gonna bet on this ankle injury not being anything too significant. Again, we can check out his player card for just another second here for those of you who didn't get the chance to read that. Yeah, it shouldn't be anything too bad. I think they're just being safe with him. He is entering the season as the RB2 for this roster. You don't want to see anything happen to a meaningful player, especially in the last preseason game of the year if you're heading into week 1. So it is a good choice, I think, to go Trey Sermon there. Michael Carter falls off the board. The next best pick for me would be Zach Moss here, who is a possibility. But I do like the fact that we were able to add a 4th running back. I feel very confident in here. So it is time to address wide receiver now. I don't want to wait too much longer for that group. We've already scored away the tight end position. There's a lot of quarterbacks I like left on the board here, particularly ones that are going within the next round or two of ADP range for these 12-team leagues. So plenty of options. I think I'm going to go Brandon Cooks here. Just scanning the board, I think that he has the best potential for volume of any of the top players at this spot. I also think that in an offense that's going to be behind a lot late in games, you're going to be passing late. You're going to be throwing the ball downfield. You're going to be looking for quick, cheap points. Brandon Cooks is an explosive player. He's quick. He's fast. He can make big spurts and plays happen. He was that guy for the Pats, the Saints, the Rams. Last season, he was a pretty dang good wide receiver for the Texans once him and Deshaun Watson got things clicking. So I like that move a lot there. Lock him up as my wide receiver 3. Seems like a pretty good value in my book. I'm going to pull the trigger on a quarterback here. Jalen Hurts is a player in the draft guide I have labeled as a boom or bust player. I have him both on my sleeper and my bust master list. And I've talked about this in a previous video. Kind of the what that means is that it's going to go one way or another. I don't see Jalen Hurts finishing as a middle-of-the-pack option at that quarterback spot. I think he's either going to be dang good with those legs, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert hopefully being healthy, a few running backs that can both make serviceable things happen between Miles Sanders' explosive play abilities, Boston Scott's just solid all-around dependable production, and the potential of, oh man, drawing a blank here, Kenneth Gainwell. Is he on the board here anywhere? Relatively. There he is. 162nd overall pick. And the possibility of Kenneth Gainwell getting some dynamic production, both split out in the slot, used in the backfield. There's a lot of stuff they can do there. Hopefully, Zach Ertz can have somewhat of a bounce-back season. I think he's past his prime. That doesn't mean he can't be of help. Jalen Reagor should be nice. There's a lot of things that play into this. Obviously, the Eagles are going to have to stay healthier than they have in the past. Hurts is going to have to improve his own accuracy and consistency as a passer. But there's a lot of stuff to like here. Ultimately, the Philadelphia situation could become too toxic that it will crush and just diminish his fantasy value. But in the middle of the 9th round in a 12-team league, I see no issue, no reason not to take him there because I think the value is that good. So we're going to go Darnell Mooney with this next pick here. I've kind of went back and forth between him and Curtis Samuel. Those are two receivers I love in the 10-plus round range of 12-team league draft boards. Mooney might just be one of the best values out there this season. For a guy that you're getting as the wide receiver 2 on his team, I expect his numbers to be dang good. He had almost 100 targets, only starting 6 games as a rookie. Yes, he was getting nice target share games as a non-starter, but he was only technically classified as a starter for 6 of those games he suited up for. So the potential for major improvement is there. If Justin Fields comes on the field, Justin Fields coming on the field, nice. If he goes out there, balls out, improves the deep ball accuracy, and stretches the field for this Bears offense that we haven't seen in a very, very, very long time, Mooney is going to have the chance to be a big-time, big-name player here. So I want to go receiver again. I've addressed quarterback and tight end enough for my liking. I'm not too concerned in any league format about overdrafting at either of those position groups. I think if you get one solid player, you can kind of lock that up and be done, especially at tight end. Quarterback, I might want to go with a second option, a safe option like a Kirk Cousins later on. Derek Carr, I wouldn't hate in the last round or so. I'm going to try and limit my risk at that position because I think Jalen Hurts has more of a likely chance than not to be a hit. But in the event he's not, I don't want to get totally burned there. At tight end, my philosophy is Hockenson should be a top 6 fantasy tight end for me, and that should give me elite positional upside at that spot on my roster. But if he doesn't work out, I'm just going to stick to the waiver wire. Look at the top end options we got last season: Robert Tonyan, Logan Thomas, among others, that just kind of came out of nowhere and were very productive players. So no reason to double down on that spot in the board. So this is an interesting draft choice. I think I'm going to go Elijah Moore here. I love the upside he has. I was really considering Marvin Jones, but based off ADP, I think I might be able to grab him here with this next round pick, which it looks like I will. Perfect. So I'm glad I waited there. Elijah Moore, I think, has awesome upside. The Jets are another team that's going to have to pass the ball a ton to stay in games late. I love his skill set. Deep slot player, can run the whole route tree. He's just got a complete game. I think that he's a very, very, very good flyer pick here. You're not investing too much risk. In the 10th plus round, you're looking for upside, in particular at the wide receiver position. This is where you can snatch up league winners. This is where you're finding players that will set you above the bar in some way, shape, or form, and you want those guys in your team. So that's what we did here. We went out on a limb, took a flyer. Now it's time to take the vet. I think there's also a lot of upside here with Marvin Jones as a player who should be very productive in a very high passing volume offense. The Jags are going to be a terrible football team. They might only win 3 or 4 games this season. I think Trevor Lawrence will be awesome, but that offensive line still stinks. The defense is young, inexperienced. They've got a lot of work to do. There's no reason this team should be anywhere close to a division contender here. I did talk about James Robinson. He did a very nice job even when they stunk last year. I think, what did they win? 1 game, like literally. Locked up that number 1 overall pick. James Robinson is a player I would have, no confidence in as a fantasy productive player had I not seen him do this last season in such a bad situation. But since I've seen him be productive with this team in his role as a member of a just atrocious squad, I feel like there's serviceable value for him there. I'll take Kirk Cousins, lock up that quarterback room here in the 13th round. That position is done for. Only need 2 more bench spots and then a defense. And then we're looking pretty good here. So 3 rounds left to draft. Jacoby Myers, I would have loved to see be a member of my team. He's been rising up my boards. I've had him as a must-own player. In the draft guide, he's still rated as such, but obviously his ADP has risen since seeing his preseason performance. It's probably looking like I'm going to take... This will be another mock draft with the Broncos or the Dolphins. It's pretty much my perennial defensive pick every single time we draft here. I could snatch up a really interesting stack with Jalen Reagor and Jalen Hurts. I am not a huge Jalen Reagor fanatic. I'm not going to tell you he's a must-draft player because I don't think he is, but it is interesting here. Maybe I don't want to... I mean, you do not rest your laurels on this pick. This doesn't need to be something that, and honestly, I've never done this before. Obviously, Devontae Smith is probably the stack you'd want to have with Jalen Hurts, and I'm not even so sure this is a stack-worthy offense. I'm just really what it comes down to is the other names I see on the board. I love Terrace Marshall, but as probably the wide receiver 3 in his offense, despite how dominant he's been in the preseason, I don't know. Will the target share be there for him? Will he see the volume we're looking for out of him? It's an interesting situation here. Bryan Edwards is another name I really like. A big-bodied player, 6'3", 215. Been compared to Terrell Owens by his head coach. A lot of interesting names at the wide receiver position here on the board. And this is what they are. They're flyer picks. So I'm going to take Jalen Reagor just for the heck of it. I don't expect him to be amazing, but because of his speed, field stretching ability, he's supposed to be used in the slot this year. We'll see how that suits him. Hopefully it can help him see an uptick in production. But since I have Jalen Hurts, why not throw a dartboard or throw out the dartboard here and just, what the heck? I'm not losing anything here in the 14th round if I miss on that draft pick. Bryan Edwards, Terrace Marshall, even Traquan Smith, I would say all have similar upsides and the potential to be really nice players, but none of them are guaranteed studs that I feel confident in saying they're going to do anything for a roster. So here in the 15th, let's see. Got defense. Almost all these teams have already locked up a defense. I think I'm one of 3 teams that hasn't done so yet. My Broncos and my Dolphins are rising up the board in ADP. I've got one more bench spot to fill. I'd rather just get the defense I like. That's the Dolphins. I do like the Broncos a lot as well, but there they go to Team 9, so I'm glad I took advantage of that and didn't potentially miss out on both of them. What I like in the defense, if this is your first time watching me, find yourself a pass rush. And if you can get a good quality secondary to go alongside that, I think that's a great advantage to you, and I think that will ultimately give your team what it's looking for in upside. You can get pick sixes with the Dolphins and the Broncos. Both have quality secondaries, good defensive coaching. Vic Fangio hasn't been awesome as a head coach, but he is a very good defensive coordinator. That 2018 season with the Bears, he was behind that unit, so a lot of stuff to be confident there and to like about the talent that both of these teams have on their respective rosters. My last draft pick here, there's a lot of tight ends. Why is Tim Tebow still on the board? Man isn't even on a team anymore. That was never going to be anything. I never drafted Tim Tebow once. I was not about to fall for that nonsense. This has kind of been my last pick on a lot of draft boards recently. Give me some Ramondre Stevenson. He should be rising up the boards now that Sony Michel is out. There's more opportunities and looks for him in this Pats offense. You've got what? James White, Damian Harris is probably your lead back. Now Ramondre Stevenson's kind of that number 3, and he's probably the second pure rusher because James White's more of the third down passing role guy. I think we're going to see a heck of a lot of Ramondre Stevenson on the goal line. He's looked great in the preseason. His ADP should be rising. Another name to keep your eye out for. I've loved him all offseason long. I love the skill set. I love the size. He's a smashing image of LeGarrette Blount to me. Like, I literally look at them and I see the same player. Brutal bulldozers on the goal line. Ramondre might even be more of a complete back. I just love that situation a lot. So, to recap the team here, let me know what you guys thought about the lineup in the comment section down below. If you've got any questions for me, feel free to ask those as well. And I'll get back to you all throughout the day here. Happy you guys tuned into today's video. Hopefully, the wisdom teeth and the puffy cheeks didn't bother you all too much today. I've just been trying very hard to not let it get to me too much and miss an episode. I've been determined to put out content for you all every day here and not miss anything despite the discomfort I'm in. But Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position, boom or bust. Could go either way. Could be a very good league-winning pick for me. Could also be a flop, but I might have to look other directions. We don't know yet. It's really going to come down to the Eagles and how productive of an overall situation that can be. I love my top 2 running backs, Zeke and Najee Harris. I feel incredibly safe and good about that upside with both of those players. McLaurin and Godwin, not the snazziest top 2 receivers in my book, but they can get the job done. They've both got upside. Their floors are a bit shaky, but not players I'm too worried about. TJ Hawkinson, one of my favorite tight ends to draft this year, is probably my most frequently picked player in the 5th round. Trey Sermon and Chase Edmonds probably not going to be starters in that flex spot for me, but the value at the running back spot was too good at that spot in the draft board to pass those 2 guys up. We filled out the receiver position late. Those guys will probably be the early on starters. Maybe Chase Edmonds finds his way into the lineup because I think he has day 1 value as a pass catcher, but Sermon we might have to be a bit more patient with. Miami Dolphins defense, I've talked about why I like them a lot. Pass rush, ball hawking secondary, a really overall good unit for fantasy. Brandon Cooks, Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, Marvin Jones, all high upside wide receivers. Not sure things. Same thing with Jalen Reagor here. None of those guys are locks to be anything productive. But I think if we're looking at the wide receiver position and just giving it a holistic view here, these dudes have a lot of upside with their respective teams and could do some big things for us. Kirk Cousins is kind of that safe backup quarterback option. 2 really nice wide receivers, a good pass-catching tight end, and a great run game. Should set up a pretty balanced attack and give him what we need from him. Hopefully he doesn't get any trouble with COVID protocols and miss games for us, but other than that, he should be just fine. And then that last round pick, Ramondre Stevenson, a solid quality player, moving up the ADP as I expect. with that trade with Sony Michel headed to the Rams here. Obviously, the Pats felt they had the depth of the running back position to make that deal, and I really like his skill set. So that was the quick synopsis of today's video. Let me know down in the comment section below one more time if you've got any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts about today's draft, a suggestion for an upcoming video. If you want to be in a mock draft here, I'm going to get subscriber mocks going within the next few days. Hopefully, as my mouth continues to heal, I should be able to go for longer times here. I think I've been trying to keep these episodes around 30 minutes or so, just for my own self and being able to actually speak for that long. Once I can get closer back to 45 minutes to an hour, we'll start having you guys jump back in here and mock draft with me. I've got a subscriber league opened up right now in the Discord, so go check that out if you want to join that. We've got a bunch of great stuff going on here on the channel. One more time, check those draft guides out. Check us out on social media. All that stuff is in the description of today's and every video. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.